The Galactic Council Chamber, an immense structure floating in the artificial gravity of the capital world, shimmered with the cold glow of 1,000 holographic displays. Representatives from the most powerful species in the galaxy gathered in a semicircle, their towering seats arranged in strict hierarchy. At the apex sat Chancellor Varan, a being of pale silver flesh and 6 glinting eyes, each reflecting the arrogance of a race that had never been defied. The matter of Earth is no longer a discussion. Varan's voice resonated through the chamber, smooth yet edged with finality. We have tolerated their defiance long enough. They must submit. A low murmur rippled through the assembly. Ambassador Kelvarek of the Zerati Dominion, a towering avian with iridescent plumage, flicked his beak in irritation. Chancellor, you call it defiance, but Earth has merely ignored us. His talons drummed against the polished surface of his podium. They have not attacked our fleets. They have not threatened our worlds. They simply refuse to acknowledge our authority. They are primitive, scoffed Counselor Zetar of the Resh Collective, his segmented mandibles clacking together. Unpredictable. In less than 2 centuries, they have gone from chemical rockets to planetary colonization. They lack discipline, yet they wield technologies even we do not fully comprehend. If they continue at this rate, they will become an uncontrollable force. Varan raised a hand, silencing the debate before it could escalate. Earth has been given 3 opportunities to swear fealty to the Council. They have not responded. This is no longer about diplomacy. It is about precedent. He leaned forward, his silver skin catching the ambient glow of the chamber. If a species as young as humanity can defy us without consequence, what stops the others from following their examples? The question lingered in the air like a shadow. There had been resistance before, fractious species that refused to integrate into the Council's dominion, but none had lasted long. When the Krillin warlords attempted insurrection, their homeworld was reduced to glass. The Vokari separatists, once a proud and noble race, had been shattered within a single cycle. The Council did not negotiate with those who failed to recognize their place. A new voice, calm yet carrying the weight of centuries, drifted from the lower ranks. You assume they will fold as easily as the others. All eyes turned to the speaker, Admiral Hesterin of the Ilari Ascendancy, a veteran of 100 conquests. His species, the longest-serving members of the Council, had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Unlike the others, his expression was unreadable, his dark, pupil-less eyes studying the situation with quiet intensity. They will have no choice, Varan countered smoothly. We send the fleet, we broadcast our ultimatum, and we give them one final opportunity to surrender. When they refuse, as they inevitably will, we make an example of them. A council-wide vote was unnecessary. The decision had been made long before the meeting had even begun. Earth would submit, or it would burn. The message was composed with the precision of a formal execution notice. It bore the insignia of the Council, a sigil recognized by every intelligent species in the known galaxy, a symbol that carried both the promise of peace and the threat of annihilation. The transmission was sent across every conceivable channel, ensuring it would be received on Earth's encrypted networks, government relays, and military outposts. This is the voice of the Galactic Council. Your civilization has been deemed in violation of the universal order. You have refused to acknowledge the authority of the Council. You have refused to offer tribute, swear allegiance, or adhere to the laws that govern all advanced species. You have ignored our envoys and disregarded our warnings. This is your final chance. You will surrender unconditionally. Your world will be placed under Council administration, your military forces dismantled, and your expansion beyond your home system permanently halted. Failure to comply will be met with overwhelming force. You have 3 standard cycles to respond. Resist, and Earth will be erased from history. Silence followed. Then for 3 cycles, nothing. The Council waited. The fleets, amassed at the edge of the Sol system, stood at the ready, a colossal force of dreadnoughts, planetary siege platforms, and entire armadas primed to descend upon Earth with the precision of an executioner's blade. Surveillance drones monitored the planet's response, intercepting transmissions, scanning for any sign of preparation, any sign of surrender. But there was nothing. No plea for negotiation. No desperate attempt at diplomacy. Not even a single acknowledgement of the ultimatum. Varan sat in his private chambers, watching a holographic projection of Earth's surface, his fingers steepled in quiet contemplation. It was not the silence that unsettled him. It was the sheer defiance of it. Every species, when faced with extinction, responded in one of two ways: panic or compliance. Even the most stubborn civilizations had, in the end, bargained for survival. Do they believe we are bluffing? Zetar hissed, his mandibles clicking in agitation. They are not fools, Kelvarek replied, his feathers ruffling in unease. Something is wrong. They are simply delaying the inevitable, Varan stated, though a sliver of doubt coiled at the edge of his mind. They are stalling, hoping for mercy that will not come. Across the void, Earth remained eerily still. Its orbital defenses, once dismissed as inadequate, had gone silent. No active scans, no energy fluctuations. Its fleets, smaller in number but oddly positioned, made no effort to reposition themselves in preparation for an invasion. There was no activity in the space stations, no evacuations, no diplomatic envoys dispatched to beg for leniency. And yet, deep beneath the cloud-covered surface, something stirred. A single transmission, buried within the Council's vast network of intercepted messages, was finally decrypted. It was brief, containing only 4 words, yet it sent a shudder through the highest ranks of the Council when it was finally reviewed. It did not beg for mercy. It did not offer a concession. It was a warning. Come and take it. Darkness stretched across the void as the Galactic Council's armada entered the Sol system, an unbroken wall of warships blotting out the distant stars. At its center loomed the dreadnought Judicator, a vessel the size of a small moon, its hull bristling with weapons powerful enough to reduce continents to cinders. The fleet advanced with the calm inevitability of an executioner's blade, prepared to deliver Earth's final judgment. Admiral Hesterin watched from the command deck, arms folded behind his back, unreadable as ever. Around him, officers monitored the fleet's approach, their displays painting a picture of absolute superiority. Earth's defenses were laughable in comparison. Scattered orbital platforms, outdated destroyers, and a handful of civilian stations repurposed into makeshift strongholds. It would be over within the hour. They have made no effort to flee, murmured Captain Ullern, a reptilian strategist whose cold-blooded calculations had seen a dozen worlds broken under the Council's rule. His slitted eyes flicked across the data stream. No mass evacuations, no distress calls, no military mobilization beyond standard patrols. If they are preparing a last stand, they are doing so in absolute silence. It is not silence, Hesterin said, his voice quiet, yet carrying weight. It is calculation. Varan's voice crackled through the command channels, a signal broadcast to every warship in the fleet. Begin the advance. Let us see what Earth thinks it can hide. The first wave of bombardment ships surged ahead, their weapons primed to reduce the outermost defense platforms to dust. Earth's orbital array was crude compared to the Council's standards: clustered railgun installations, automated missile batteries, and a scattering of energy-based turrets that flickered with antiquated power signatures. The fleet's gunners barely acknowledged them as threats. The first volley of plasma lances streaked toward their targets, lighting up the void in brilliant arcs of annihilation. And then, without warning, they vanished. Confusion rippled through the fleet. The sensors registered the attacks, the weapons had fired, and yet nothing. The platform still stood, untouched, as if the laws of physics had simply ceased to apply. Impossible, Ullern hissed, talons tightening against the control panel. They cannot. Then the platforms retaliated. Kinetic slugs, accelerated to near-light speeds, tore through the first wave of Council warships before their shields could react. The Eminence, a heavy cruiser at the forefront, split apart as a single impact punched clean through its reinforced hull, vaporizing its core. An entire wing of destroyers followed, sheared in half by unseen forces, their debris scattering like broken glass. Stealth weapons, no energy signatures, an officer shouted, his voice drowned out by the alarm klaxons. No, Hestron murmured, his eyes narrowing. They knew we would fire first. They knew exactly where we would fire. Those defenses aren't primitive. They are waiting. The realization came too late. From the dark side of Earth's moon, a new fleet emerged. Not scattered patrols or obsolete warships, but sleek, angular vessels with hulls that seemed to drink in the light. Their energy signatures barely registered, their movements impossibly precise. They accelerated toward the Council's battle line in perfect formation. Earth had never intended to fight a desperate defense. They had laid a trap. The Judicator's shields flared as unseen forces struck its flank. Not energy weapons, but something far worse. Hacked targeting systems, electronic warfare suites disrupting communications, entire command relays severed before countermeasures could be enacted. Ships blinked off the Council's displays, their systems turned against them, their pilots screaming as they lost control. And then Earth's fleet fired. There was no grand spectacle, no drawn-out engagement of attrition. The human warships did not fight with overwhelming numbers, nor did they rely on brute force. They fought like surgeons wielding scalpels, every strike deliberate, every movement calculated. Their railguns punched through shielding systems with terrifying efficiency, exploiting weaknesses as if they had studied every Council vessel in intimate detail. Their fighters, smaller and faster than anything the Council had encountered, weaved through the chaos, delivering pinpoint destruction before vanishing back into the void. A desperate command from Veron echoed through the fleet. Regroup, regroup, and retaliate. But there was no retaliation. A second wave of Earth's forces descended from beyond Jupiter's shadow, flanking the already crumbling formation. Orbital weapons platforms, dismissed as crude relics, fired with terrifying precision, their munitions striking vulnerable engine cores and munition stockpiles. Each explosion sent shockwaves through the fleet, turning disciplined ranks into scattered wreckage. The Council's most decorated warships, vessels that had conquered entire civilizations, were being torn apart as though they were nothing more than training dummies. Inside the Judicator, silence hung heavy. Reports came in fragmented bursts, losses mounting at exponential rates, weapons disabled, communications jammed. Even the flagship's titanic defenses were failing under the relentless assault. "We must withdraw," Ullern growled, his claws twitching in barely restrained panic. Veron's face contorted with rage, his silver skin rippling. "We do not retreat from primitives." A new voice cut through the chaos. "Calm, human. This is Admiral James Calloway of the United Terran Defense Fleet." The message carried no bravado, no arrogance, only a simple, chilling certainty. "You came to take our world. You thought we would kneel. You thought we were weak." The Judicator's main viewport flickered, revealing a new transmission. It was not a demand for surrender. It was a visual feed from Earth's surface, a facility buried deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, where massive hangars stretched endlessly into the distance. Inside, rows upon rows of warships lay dormant, their designs unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Calloway's voice continued, quiet yet deafening. "You brought one fleet. We haven't even launched ours yet." The horror sank in too late. The Council had expected a battle of occupation. They had walked into a war of extermination. The Judicator shuddered as its shields collapsed entirely, its hull breached by precision bombardments. Fires erupted across its decks. The fleet was disintegrating, their last-ditch escape attempts cut off by human warships that moved like ghosts, outmaneuvering every desperate counterattack. Hestron exhaled slowly, a rare expression of something close to admiration crossing his features. "They have been preparing for us for years." "No," Ullern whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. "They have been waiting." Outside, the remnants of the once mighty Council fleet burned in the darkness, their wreckage joining the graveyard of the countless civilizations they had once crushed beneath their rule. And Earth had not even begun. Wreckage drifted in the cold void, silent testaments to the Galactic Council's arrogance. The once mighty Armada, a fleet that had conquered worlds without resistance, now lay in ruins. Shattered hulls tumbled through the darkness, the remnants of warships that had never known defeat until now. Fire still burned within the husks of the dead, their light flickering against the backdrop of distant stars. On the bridge of the Judicator, the silence was absolute. Smoke curled through the air, the acrid scent of burning circuitry mingling with the sharp tang of ozone. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in crimson, casting long shadows across the figures within. Admiral Hesterin remained standing, though the weight of what had transpired pressed against him like a collapsing star. The great Judicator, pride of the Council's fleet, was dead in space. Its once impenetrable shields had been stripped away with surgical precision, its vast weapon systems rendered inert before they could mount a meaningful retaliation. The humans had not merely defeated them. They had humiliated them. Chancellor Varan sat slumped in his command seat, his silver skin dull, his once arrogant gaze distant and hollow. His hands trembled as he gripped the arms of his chair. This cannot be. His voice was barely a whisper, thick with disbelief. We are the Galactic Council. We are order. We are law. How could? They outplayed us, Hesterin said simply, his voice devoid of resentment. They were ready before we ever set foot in this system, and we never saw it. A single transmission pulsed through what remained of the Council's comm channels. The same calm voice, neither gloating nor angry. Admiral James Calloway, your fleet is destroyed. Your survivors will not be harmed if they surrender now. We are not conquerors. We are not executioners. But let this be understood. Earth will never bow. Hesterin exhaled, slow and steady, his mind racing through the implications. Humanity had held back. They had never intended to destroy the Council outright, only to prove something. He had seen countless civilizations fall before the might of the Council, but none had chosen to let their enemies live after such a decisive victory. It was not mercy. It was a message. The transmission continued. We know what you are. You move from world to world, demanding submission, destroying those who refuse. We have studied your history, your tactics, your weapons. We knew you would come one day, and so we prepared. Hesterin closed his eyes. The defenses, the electronic warfare, the impossibly precise strikes. All of it had been a lesson crafted with care, not just for the Council, but for the entire galaxy. You believed we were weak because we did not answer your demands. You assumed silence meant ignorance. But we saw the Council for what it was, long before you ever turned your eyes toward us. Varan's hands clenched into fists, his body trembling with impotent rage. They mock us? No, Hesterin murmured. They warn us? Calloway's voice carried on, unwavering. This is the only warning you will receive. We do not seek war. We do not desire conquest. But if you ever attempt to subjugate us again, we will not stop at your fleets. We will come for your Council. We will come for your worlds. And we will show you what happens to those who believe themselves untouchable. The transmission cut out. Silence returned to the bridge. The weight of the words settled on them all, heavier than the defeat itself. Hesterin turned to Varan, the once proud Chancellor, now shaking in quiet fury. We must retaliate. Varan spat, voice hoarse. We must regroup, rebuild. Show them that we can't? Hesterin interrupted, his voice sharp. He gestured toward the viewport, where debris floated like scattered bones in a cosmic graveyard. They let us live. Do you understand what that means? They did not crush us because they did not need to. Varan's eyes burned with denial, but deep within them, fear coiled like a serpent. He had spent his existence at the apex of the galactic order, believing no power could ever challenge the Council's dominion. And yet here they were. We return to the Council, Hesterin said, turning away. We tell them exactly what happened, and then we decide if we wish to survive. The defeated fleet limped from the Sol system, trailing wreckage and wounded pride. What few ships remained carried the truth with them, a truth that would shake the very foundations of the Galactic Council. In the days that followed, whispers spread through the galaxy. The Council had lost. Earth had won, and humanity's message was clear. The last council that demanded Earth's surrender had become an example.